are talking Monstrous. This one is directed by Chris Silverstone and stars Christina Ricci, who I suppose most people know from the character of Wednesday in the Addams Family live action movies. But here we are in a psychological horror film dressed up as a creature feature. Now it appears to be the 1950s, and we have Christina Ricci's character as a mother who is seemingly running away from her partner to get away from what we presume is some type of abusive relationship. And she's there with her young son, and they kind of settle in this kind of large house in this small American town, which happens to be by this kind of lake. Now the little boys seem to think there is some type of creature that is living in the lake, and there may well be, or it might be something completely different. You have to watch the movie to find out. Now what will happen, I'm not going to tell you obviously for spoilers here, but this is quite a hard movie to really critique without kind of spoiling anything, so you'll forgive me if I'm somewhat kind of vague with some descriptors here. But what do we like about the movie? What can we say about it? Okay, so I think this movie definitely has some artistic merit behind it. Now, when you first watch this movie, you may think it looks a little cheap, and I'll come on to that at times. But it has this kind of weird. How can I describe it? It has this kind of weird feel to it. This kind of like slightly kind of out of sync kind of atmosphere that is in the movie. And initially, you might kind of put it away as, oh, it kind of just looks like a low budget film, but in actual fact, I think at least part of it is a choice by the kind of the filmmakers here for an in-universe reason about why the kind of the situation that we're looking at is a little bit kind of off kilter. And as the kind of the film progresses, there's a revelation within the story that completely kind of changes your kind of your worldview on regards to what's kind of going on. And I think it's handled interestingly, and I think it partially works. And it is probably the most interesting thing in the movie, to be honest with you, and certainly speaks to a certain type of trauma that kind of people can kind of obviously experience and kind of lead them down a particular kind of sort of a path. And what I will say as well about the movie, kind of aesthetically, it has this 50s feel to it. And to be fair, the 50s aren't a period where we see a lot of films take place these days, sort of films that take place in a period setting very rarely take place in the 50s, I find, these days. So it's kind of quite nice to see a kind of a 50s set, and they obviously spent money on kind of like 50s licensed music and stuff like that. And it's nice to see Christina Ricci in the movie, and I'll be honest, I think her performance is mixed, if I'm honest, but you feel like you're watching a professional actor at least. And there's some interesting kind of creature designs. Okay, so what doesn't work in this movie? So without kind of spoiling anything, what I will say is I feel this movie is a short film stretched out into a feature-length movie. I don't think there's enough here to warrant a full movie. Now, when I was first watching this, I was kind of like half an hour in my God, there's been barely any dialogue. A lot of the time it's Christina Ricci's character on her own or with her son, and he doesn't really say a hell of a lot. And I was thinking, man, the dialogue has been so minimal recently, in the kind of this first kind of half an hour. It doesn't feel like there's really much has happened, to be honest with you. And there's a lot of this movie that is trying to tell you things without kind of explicitly showing you. Lots of kind of symbolisms here and things like this. But it feels to me like the concept is stretched. It kind of feels like if this were to be a short film, and I think it would have had a little bit more of a punch, to be honest, because I don't think the concept here warrants the feature-length movie. When it's all said and done, when you watch the complete thing, you think, this movie, I feel, doesn't amount to very much, to be honest. Again, being vague with the kind of the plot situation here. But when it's all said and done, you think, okay, what's the kind of what's actually happened in the movie? And you realise it's not actually that much, to be honest. Now, I've mentioned the kind of like this kind of off-kilter feel that this movie has. But I've got to say, it does look a little cheap. I mean, they've done well for kind of having 50s cars and fashion and music and like the radio and stuff like that. But you can't help this feels like it's almost like a stage production or something along the lines of that. And it has this, the way it's filmed is modern feeling. Although the kind of the aesthetics of 50s style, you can't help but feel it's like a modern setting, but it feels very much like it's on sets. Now it gives it this kind of cheap feel. This movie feels cheap. Now there is an in-universe reason you can argue that why that is, but nonetheless, you know, it is what it is. The acting, I'm a little mixed on, to be honest. I think there is some sequences where I feel are relatively well acted. Now this is really, it kind of lives or dies on Christina Ricci's performance, because she's the central character, and although we do have some supporting characters come in and out, there's not a lot, there's no real co-male lead, for example, outside the kid. So really, a lot of it is on Christina Ricci's shoulders here. And I've got to say, I don't think she was the best actress, to be honest. I mean, like I said, she's not bad, and there's sequences here where I felt she does a good job in certain scenes, but there are scenes here where I felt she massively overacts, to be honest. So I was a little mixed on her kind of like performance, to be honest. And she's one of these names of a recognisable, you know, face, a recognisable name, but she hasn't, you know, she hasn't kind of had much in the kind of the public eye of recent years. She seems to have, you know, she comes out with a few indie movies here and there, but has never really kind of caught on as a kind of a mainstream actress. She might have a bit of a fan club, I suspect, a lot from the kind of the Addams Family, that kind of goth girl kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know if she was a fantastic actress, but certainly not bad. I think the problem maybe with this movie, it's so, you know, there's not a huge amount of kind of plot development, and you know, when we do see some kind of more of this special effects kind of style stuff, which I'll come on to in a second, you know, it's not a huge amount, so a lot of it rests on Christina Ricci's performance, which is, I feel, is the performance isn't great, and I also think some of the kind of the writing here isn't too good either. So in the subject of the writing, you know, I can understand what this movie is trying to do, and like I've said, it's trying to have a depiction of an emotion ultimately, and kind of how someone responds to a traumatic event at the end of the day. Now it might not be immediately apparent what that is, but you know, it will be revealed. But it doesn't make sense to me in a narrative way. Now again, I don't want to say anything about the actual plot here, but when we think about the kind of the time setting that this takes place in, and kind of when we learn what happens, to me it doesn't make sense about why it's in a particular kind of time setting is the best way I'll describe it. And that's just one thing. I don't want to go dig too into the kind of the minutiae there, but to me, I understand the concept, but I don't think it was executed particularly well in some aspects. Some aspects I think, you know, the reveal was interesting and it made sense in a way, but there were some aspects to me when you kind of dig a little deeper that thinking, well, I don't understand the relevance of the 50s, you know, for example, but some other the other things as well. On the subject of the other things, the creature, again, I'm not sure of the relevance. Again, I'm about sort of spoiling here. We have a creature, and it's very CGI. I think more could have been done in a practical aspect of this, to be honest. There are some practical elements to it, but there's a little bit of an over-reliance on CGI and it looks a little wonky. Again, it has that cheapness feel to it. But in a narrative sense, again, things are revealed, but I feel it's a little convoluted in regards to making a complete sense, if that makes sense. Anyway, all this talk about sense, I'm going to score the film now, and I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. I think it's a little bit of a swing and a miss, but I appreciate a swing, if that makes sense. And it is nice to see Christina Ricci on screen, even though I don't think she really kind of knocked it out of the park, if I'm completely honest with you. It's a 4 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.